Tyron Whitten is the new One Nation Senator for Western Australia. First time One Nation has won a senator in WA outside of a double dissolution. They also, of course, won one in New South Wales. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
You overcame the third Labor candidate in the last hurdle. Not entirely a huge shock, but still Labor had been leading. So it was for some out of nowhere. How were you feeling throughout the kind of count progression? Were you confident just before the AEC declaration?
No, definitely not confident, mate. There was still a gap, and I had quite a few preferences that needed to come my way to get me across the line. So I think we got down to count 169 before I got there. So it wasn't an easy one. It was nerve-wracking.
One Nation's obviously had success in WA this year at the state level as well. You got two MPs in Rod Caddies and Phil Scott. The votes obviously lifted statewide as well. What do you think's behind that? Because One Nation has previously had, I think, one WA as their most successful state outside of Queensland. Why do you think now there's that increased support and that return to One Nation support?
Yeah, look, I'm not sure why it's Western Australia, but maybe people here are waking up quicker. The the plight of everybody, our freedoms just keep getting eroded. All the problems with small business and yeah, I mean, there's a list as long as your arm of issues, and people are just sick of the two major parties, unfortunately. So there was a lot of people undecided, and I think we resonated with a lot of people with the policies we put out. It was about having good candidates and good policy.
When did you kind of make that call to actually run for One Nation here? What kind of attracted you to the party in the first place?
Well, yeah, my brother and I had a successful in Western Australia, and he decided to buy my shares out, so it freed me up to look for something else. And yeah, I met Rod Caddies a good while ago, and we've been talking about it, and I sort of throw my hat in the ring if there was ever an opportunity, and yeah, here we are.
It's interesting in terms of your election. I think some might have been surprised just purely because they hadn't seen much of yourself personally. So it did come as a bit of a shock to some. I've heard in kind of people I've been speaking to from across political circles, they've described you as a paper candidate, that they weren't out there. Were you on the ground campaigning over the past few months? Because I'm in Melbourne, so I don't see obviously Western Australia campaigning on the ground. But yeah, were you? Because again, I've just not we haven't seen much content. There were a few images. I know you met Pauline Hanson. She was with you in about April. But yeah, how much on the ground campaigning were you doing?
Every time Pauline's been in town for the last 18 months, I've been on tour with her. So definitely not a paper candidate. I've been travelling with Rod all around the countryside during the state campaign, learning and helping and doing what I can to get those guys across the line. So yeah, 200% not a paper candidate, but certainly not well known. I'd make no representation there. And I've never had a big profile online, so you won't find much about me online. But not a paper candidate, mate.
And so, in terms of when you're sworn in, it's a few weeks away from the actual changeover of senators. What are you really going to be advocating for, both in terms of the national One Nation policy, but also, I mean, you're representing a state-specific WA issues.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows what One Nation stands for, lower immigration and that sort of thing. So there'll be those issues to tackle. But me personally, I come from a small business background, so things like trying to cut red and green tape and help small business, farmers and our food production system. I've got an interest there. Our freedoms are constantly being eroded, and the family unit. It's yeah, I'm I'm an advocate for safety for women and children, and also for trying to teach young men to be good people, because we need good young men in the society.
Look, One Nation in its past has obviously had a history of some of its MPs, quitting the party. One of the former WA senators did. There was a state MLC who quit the other day. I'm sure you're committed behind Pauline Hanson and her leadership. But if there is a disagreement in the party room, there's obviously four senators now. If there is a disagreement, how are you going to go around kind of resolving that internally without the need for defections, as has been the case for about two-thirds of One Nation MPs prior?
Well, it's like being a parent. I mean, I've got four children and four grandchildren, so I've got a bit of experience. And behind closed doors, you can have your fights and talk about whatever you like, but when you come out, it's a united front. So, I've already looked Pauline in the eye and put my hand on my heart and said I will never leave the party. And to the point that I think that people that do, we need to change legislation somehow so that can't be the case. When you're elected, and make no mistake, I know how I got here. It was on the Pauline shoulders. Nobody voted for Tyron Whitten. It was voting for Pauline Hanson and One Nation. So I'm elected on her shoulders. If I was to leave, I should leave my position and go for re-election as an independent if I wanted to. But I have no plans on doing that. But I think everybody that leaves their party should be forced to do that.
All right. Well, congratulations again on your election, Tyron Whitten. Thanks for joining us on Six News.
Thanks, Leo.